Yes, good morning and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back this beautiful morning. Every single one of you, apologies, was having our microphones tested to make sure everything does check out. And as just as the norm always is, because you never know what's to come and things like that. But anyways, good to be back and welcome back from the start of the UEFA Champions League. I hope you did enjoy it. We did kick action did kick off yesterday in as far as the UEFA Champions League is concerned. Hi LFC, yes, I can't stay because I have school. It's because I have to be in school early. I completely understood. I wish you the best of luck on your day at school and everything else that you may have to do along the way today. Uh, do you have rugby training later today, as the case often is? But thank you so much for always chipping in a minute, even when you're in the rush hour of school. So I mean, UEFA Champions League. That's the gist of everything. That's the topic this morning, and nothing less, nothing more. Manchester United fans, we are sorry, we don't know what you're training for, but there's no midweek action for you. And not even the Carabao Cup, which did actually go on last night with Aston Villa in action, as well as Crystal Palace, not to mention Brentford. Grimsby Town managed to knock out Grimsby Town managed to knock out Sheffield Wednesday when they beat them by a goal to nil at the third round of the competition. And yeah, isn't it interesting that all that is happening? You know, isn't it interesting that all that is happening? Really? So, hello, Caesar Farm. I mean, you must you must feel for Manchester United fans because it's not easy. It's not easy. Why? It's not easy being them that there's nothing, no European football, no Conference League, no UEFA Europa League, no Champions League, um, no Carabao Cup. Now, I for one, when I was making my predictions for the season, I was saying it was going to be a blessing in disguise for them, given that they have one game a week, and yet there they are on the other side making discussions to see whether they can play some friendly games during midweek when they have no European football action to, I don't know, to raise some revenue, to further their brand, whatever you may want to call it. There will be uh, on face value useless games. On face value, there will be useless games. On the monetary value, they will be very useful, and also keeping those players quite, very, very busy, in that regard. So it depends on how you want to look at it. But in my opinion, it is what it is. I think for all the problems that they do have, maybe if they can squeeze in some friendly games that help them sort of improve on their performances, we are up for it. But if money is the motivation, I do not think money is going to dig them out of the shithole that they are in. They ought to do themselves better than that. But like I said, yesterday we did have Grimsby Town. This is the side that knocked out Manchester United and knocked out Sheffield Wednesday by goal to nil. Brentford advanced at the expense of Aston Villa on penalties that proceeded a 1-1 draw. Brentford winning the penalty shootout by 4 goals to 2. Now, many of us, including myself, were doubters of Keith Andrews when he assumed that role after the departure of Thomas Frank, and rightly so, because Thomas Frank walked away with everything, every little assistant that there was, including perhaps some of possibly the Kidsman, and left nothing at the GTEC Stadium. And yet Keith Andrews has managed to assemble himself a team that is getting results. They may not be the best of results from the onset. It's completely understandable, but at least they are getting some results, including advancing to the fourth round of the EFL Cup. Crystal Palace also managed to advance on penalties at the expense of Millwall. Those penalties also proceeded a 1-1 draw in normal time, and they won the penalty shootout by 4 goals to 2. And next week, midweek, that's when you should expect another. Oh, sorry, not just next week. But yeah, next week there will be some games that will be played in the EFL Cup. That's at the third round. That's where you'll have majority of the Premier League teams, the Arsenals, post Manchester City, and all the others, Everton. But in the meantime, tomorrow Swansea will be up against Nottingham Forest, as far as that competition is concerned. Anyways, back to the gist of the conversation. That is the UEFA Champions League. Where do we start it all? We will start off with PSV and Hoven, who were beaten by 3-1 against Union Saint Gilloise. I mean, I did not see this result coming. I do not know much about Union Saint Gilloise, but I thought PSV and Hoven being at home sort of gave them the advantage. They are the reigning champions of the Dutch LDBs. But yeah, they were sort of blown away by surprise and were beaten by 3-1. And then on the other side, you had Arsenal are still in the early kickoff of the UEFA Champions League. Remember, those games did kick off at 7:45 p.m. Arsenal managing to overcome Athletic Bilbao, beating them by 2-0. Athletic Bilbao against English opponents is one of those teams that doesn't fare one too well, but also the overall game in itself wasn't the best of games to watch, if we are being honest. In terms of outlook, in terms of entertainment, it wasn't the best of games to watch. Arsenal dominated the affairs with an overall 62% ball possession compared to 38% only for Athletic Bilbao. 6 shots on target compared to Bilbao's 2, 3 off target for each side. Shots blocked. Bilbao had 6 shots blocked, while Arsenal had 1 block. Now, corner kicks were 2 apiece. So clearly that tells you what was happening on either side of the pitch. While Arsenal were dominant on ball possession, especially in the first half, they didn't look threatening going forward on goal. I think there were a couple of chances that fell to Victor Gyökeres, one which he did not strike the ball with enough strength to trouble Unai Simon in goal, and then the other was a diving header. Again, I think it was Urian Timber that floated in that ball, and then Victor Gyökeres goes for the diving header, and that ball was wide of the mark. So, and then there was a chance, I think, for Noni Madueke, but these were all not even half chances, I would call them, but that was the nature of the game. It was dull in the sense that both teams tried to attack on the other side, but then they were just not finding that final pass. They were just not finding that final ball. I thought they all did not commit to trying other means, and by other means I mean when it came to searching for goals, perhaps shooting from distance. Of course, they closed down each other's spaces in that regard, but once in a while you saw a space pop up and you thought, why not go for it? And yet somebody did not go for it. So that was the nature of the game, really. That was the nature of the game. But a beautiful game nonetheless to watch, I must acknowledge. So Arsenal in the second half, again, for me, I gave my man of the match accolade to Gabriel Magalhaes. Reason being because of his leadership. Remember, he was wearing the captain's armband. His leadership, the way he commanded that defense, he defended really, really well, solidly against Inaki Williams and all the other attackers that Athletic Bilbao had to their disposal. When you look at that Arsenal starting lineup, of course, again, there were questions. Ebeleche Eze did have the best of games. Not that he did not do enough to have a good game, but they just did not get him on the ball as often as they should have, because Arsenal continued with their over-reliance on the right wing, again, popping most of the balls down that right wing. And I was thinking to myself, not again, I put some balls to the left wing and do it much quicker so that, you give somebody room to think and, take on players. I thought maybe my reservation was that he did not take matters in his own hands in the sense of, taking on more players. I will know he's very, very capable of it, but also in a way I do understand because it was his debut in the UEFA Champions League. So the stage, there must be some form of stage fright or some form of respect at playing at that level. So really, it's understandable in that sense. Arsenal's backline remained unchanged from what managed to win the game against Nottingham Forest. including David Ryan goal, Martin Zubimendi, Declan Rice, and Mikel Merino. Declan Rice coming in for the captain. That's Martin Odegaard, who started over the weekend against Nottingham Forest. Arsenal getting themselves booked thrice for stupid yellow cards, two of them for Noni Madueke and Martin Zubimendi for time wasting, because Martin Zubimendi delayed a quick restart while Noni Madueke went to take a corner kick and he thought he had been given a bed rest. So that's the kind of the game. Once again, Noni Madueke looked good. However, some of his shots or attempted passes in the final third fell short. He needs to polish his final ball. He needs to really work on that. He's very good. He's quite athletic. He's good on taking on players 1v1. He gets in the right positions. He runs into the right spaces. But that final ball is still lacking for me, in my opinion. I feel there's something he still needs to work on when it comes to his final ball. The way he delivers that ball needs to be more polished. It needs to be more polished. It needs to be right on the money for Victor Gyökeres to lash on and things like that. Really. So it's one that you look on to and say, yeah, he has to improve in that area of the pitch. And then, of course, when again looking at that starting 11, Declan Rice had a very slow first half. I thought he was all over the place. He did not find the right footing in the game, and the game did not pick up for him until in the second half. The second half, that's when he had a brilliant display. And Mikel Merino, once again, 50-50. Like I did say in the build-up to this particular game, sometimes you can't help but wonder what is he actually good at, because every time he's played in midfield, you sort of struggle to see his contribution stand out. And yet when he leads the line, it's easy to see what his contribution is. It takes you back when he plays for Spain. Somehow gets in the right places and scores all his goals, including the hat-trick against Turkey during the World Cup qualifiers recently during the international break. So he's that kind of player, really. He's not a playmaker. He's not a solid, defensive midfielder or central midfielder. So he's there apart. Maybe I would want to put him in the mold of an Aaron Ramsey, but he does not have the pace of Aaron Ramsey. You see, Aaron Ramsey was the kind of player who did defensive duties and also popped up in the right areas and scored goals, which is typical of a number 8. He wasn't the best passer of the ball, and neither is Mikel Merino. Sometimes I feel he slows down the game a great deal of time. Which is what I also saw of Martin Zubimendi yesterday. I don't know if it was intention, but sometimes I felt, you're slowing down the game. And yet, in certain phases, I thought Arsenal needed to move that ball a little bit quicker, especially to Ebelechi Eze, to Noni Madueke, to Victor Gyökeres, and things like that. So that was the kind of game that we did watch. Oha and Sunset, Alex Belenga, and Joao Rageza, as well as Danny Vivian, I thought were some of the standout performers on the side of Atletico Bilbao. Excuse me, apologies on that. So, but yeah, very good game. Cristhian Mosquera, I mean, for 21-year-old French international who until yesterday wasn't known to many football fans. I mean, he's put in quite the performance. Thrice he's featured for this Arsenal side this season in terms of 90 minutes. I will remember him coming on in the 50th minute. I went to Anfield and then starting over the weekend against Nottingham Forest. And this time around, he was once again called to action, which now begs the question, because Arsenal have a date with themselves. Arsenal have a date with Manchester City over the weekend. It's starting to beg the question whether the kind of selection headache Mikel Arteta will have, does he stick with Cristhian Mosquera or he gives William Saliba his position back? We know they will be up against Broad Erling Haaland. Mosquera has never played against Broad Erling Haaland. We know how he is muscular. We know how he's tall, physically strong, has a bit of pace, and for whatever he has in pace, Cristhian Mosquera can, I think go to toe with him. When it comes to the physicality, maybe I get the feeling that Mosquera needs some bit of building, a little further, the kind of way Jakub Kivio had been when he had just come in at Arsenal. But he's not placed the foot wrong, so there's not anything to fault him for that would necessitate a swap of places for him and William Saliba. But again, you ought to respect William Saliba. I feel he's a better defender. Yes, he's had his couple of errors here and there, especially towards the tail end of last season, especially during the time when he was without Gabriel Magalhaes, which is why, for me, gives more credit to Gabriel Magalhaes. He makes Saliba look good, as does Saliba make him on the other side. So there's sort of a very, very good partnership. And it's not to say break up the partnership, but I think against Manchester City, you need your very, very, very best. That consistency, you need the guys that have played against the City side before. We know you do not know what City is going to show up. Is it the one that blew away Manchester United, or is it the one that lost to Brighton and Hove Albion? Because that game is going to be at the Emirates Stadium. So we will wait and see. Anyways, Arsenal needed 2 goals from 2 second half substitutes in Gabriel Martinelli and Leandro Trossard, with each providing the assist for the other to score and make it to win that game by 2 goals to 0. And the first goal coming in the 72nd minute, while Trossard's goal came in the 87th minute. So, like I said, prior to that, there wasn't really much you could look onto to say here is where the goal is going to come from. Set pieces did not threaten as much, given that we know Arsenal that are very, very known for being clinical or very good with set piece play and things like that. So yeah, but that was the result. Arsenal are winning by 2 goals to 0 to kick off their new campaign with a victory. Then Juventus shared the scores in a 4-all draw against Borussia Dortmund. Now, particularly for me, I thought Borussia Dortmund had won this game at least by 4 goals to 2. But like the old saying goes, until it's not over, until it is over, until you hear that final whistle, nothing is done, because it was Karim Adeyemi that scored the first goal to give Borussia Dortmund the lead. We're talking about a game that was goalless at halftime, and yet we had 8 goals in the second half. Isn't that literally record breaking? With Grisa providing the assist. Then Kenan Yildiz did score to restore parity in the 63rd minute. Ademi's goal having come in the 52nd minute. Then Numenka also scored to make it 2-1. That was in the 65th minute, with Ademi providing the assist, while Dusan Vlahovic scored 2 minutes later to restore parity. And then in the 74th minute, Kuoto did score to make it 3-2 in favor of Borussia Dortmund. That was in the 74th minute, and then in the 86th minute, that is when they scored a penalty from Ben Sebaini there to make it 4-2. And I thought, Borussia Dortmund have closed this chapter, 3 points on board and on the march to the next one. And yet, Juventus had other ideas, because in added time, 4th minute of added time, Dusan Vlahovic did score his second on the night to make it 4-3, with Kalulu providing the assist, while Dusan Vlahovic himself turned provider in the 96th minute, or in the 6th minute of added time, for Lewis Kelly, who scored to make it 4-4. And you could see the kind of relief on Igor Tudor's face once that goal went in. once they managed to pick up a draw, because he knew he was going to be under fire, and he would be under fire. Because how do you explain conceding 4 goals in just a single half? It's not very, very typical of an Italian team, especially an Italian giant at the stature of Juventus. But it did happen. So beautiful game of football. And then quickly, Real Madrid beat up against Olympic Marseille by 2 goals to 1. Not the most convincing of performances from Real Madrid, but a win is a win. They needed 2 penalties that were scored by Kylian Mbappe. Particularly, I did not agree with that penalty that was awarded to the second penalty that was awarded to Real Madrid, as I did not agree with the penalty that was awarded to Borussia Dortmund in that game because of the circumstances. I've not been able to see the different angles as I'd hoped to see, perhaps maybe to shift my stance on those goals. But I mean, when when a player hits the floor, um, it's hard to know where his arms are going to be. You know, it's hard to determine where his arms are going to be. Like I said, um, the motions of the body are as deliberate as they are a reflex in many cases. Now, what do I mean by that? Sometimes it's deliberate movement, sometimes it's involuntary movement. It's a 50-50. So it's upon the referee to have the cognition to say, my common sense tells me this was never intended. This is a ball to hand. That's a handball. To draw the line. So you have a player sliding in with the tackle. Of course, he does miss the ball, doesn't catch the opponent's player, but then somehow the ball hits his arm while he is dragging himself on the floor. And suddenly you give it a penalty. I did not see a stretch of arms with the intent to handle the ball, and yet a penalty was awarded. So bit of a difficult one. But yeah, Timothy Weah had opened the scoring for Roberto Di Zerbi's side, while Kylian Mbappe's 2 penalties in either half managed to make sure that Real Madrid kick-started their campaign with a victory, as the Tottenham Hotspurs beating up against Villarreal by a goal to nil. That goal scored by Luis Jr. It was an own goal, very, very unfortunate for Luis Jr., but that is the nature of football, and Tottenham managed to win that fixture by a goal to nil. That result in itself will give them a lot of confidence in their abilities, in their expectations, in as far as the rest of the campaign goes. Thomas Frank just needed to break that ice. Anyways, guys, action does continue today in as far as the UEFA Champions League is concerned, as well as tomorrow. That will be Thursday. But for now, our focus is going to be on Wednesday, because we have Olympiacos up against Paphos, as well as Slavia Praha against Bodo Glimt. Those games kicking off at 7:45 p.m. In the late kickoffs, that's at 10 p.m. We do have Ajax up against Inter Milan, a very, very beautiful game to look forward to. We do have Bayern Munich up against Chelsea, while Liverpool will take on Atletico de Madrid, and then Paris Saint-Germain will be up against, Paris Saint-Germain will be up against Atlanta. Atlanta, the 2023 Europa League champions. Atletico de Madrid have not had a brilliant start to the season. I think in 4 games, they've only won 1, drawn 2, and lost 1. While Liverpool remain perfect in as far as the Premier League is concerned, with 4 victories out of 4, including their very last being a 1-0 victory against Burnley. That penalty scored by Mo Salah late on in at the time. So, yeah, while the opponents on present paper may not be that threatening, there's always cause for concern. We were talking about upsets. They do not just exist in cup competitions. Yesterday, Qarabag came from 2 goals down to beat up against Benfica by 3 goals to 2, and yet they were visiting Benfica in Portugal. So that tells you that anything can happen. But while Liverpool are the much, much better side at present day, I do not know whether Alexander Isak will be fit enough to make his debut because he was left out of the matchday squad over the weekend. But yeah, that is an expectation. Then Bayern Munich Chelsea, a renewal of old rivalries. These guys did meet in the 2012 UEFA sorry, UEFA Champions League final, and we know who came out on top as Chelsea were eventually crowned champions. So you do have that that sort of bit of historical context between the two sides. In the 2019-2020 season, they did meet, and you remember that was in the still home and away format. Chelsea lost to Bayern Munich at the Allianz Arena by 4 goals to 1, while they lost the reverse fixture by 3 goals to 0. You remember it was Bayern Munich that went on to lift that UEFA Champions League title, winning, beating was the opponent. Uh, was it PSG by goal to 0? That goal scored by Kingsley Coman, so, and then you have to go back to the UEFA Super Cup uh, in 2013. Bayern Munich beat up against Chelsea on penalties, but those penalties proceeded a 2-all draw. Remember, in 2012-2013, Bayern Munich won the Champions League title when they beat up against Borussia Dortmund by 2 goals to 1, while Chelsea, I think, beat up against Benfica by 2 goals to 1 in the finals of the UEFA Europa League to win it. At the time, they were under the charges of Rafael Benitez Maudis, who had come in as an interim, I think, to take over the realms from, was it Andre? No, it wasn't Andre Villas-Boas. It was Roberto. It was, I think, Di Matteo, at the time. So that's the bit of a historical context in terms of head-to-head between these two sides. And like I said, then in 2012, Bayern Munich lost to Chelsea on penalties. That proceeded a 1-all draw in the finals for Chelsea to win their first UEFA Champions League accolade. And then you have to rewind things back to 2005 when Bayern Munich beat up against Chelsea by 3 goals to 2. That is at the Allianz Arena, before Chelsea beat up against Bayern Munich by 4 goals to 2. So you can see that Chelsea have beaten Bayern Munich twice in the UEFA Champions League. Only once has it come in open play. That was in 2005 when they beat them by 4 goals to 2. While in 2012 it was a 1-all draw. For which, after which we went into penalties, and then very 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 recently. That was 2019-2020, Bayern Munich beating up against Chelsea home and away with the 7-1 aggregate score. Of course, it's a different Chelsea side that they will be meeting in as far as today's fixture is concerned. But you're talking about a Chelsea side who have Marco Cucurella, Trevor Chalobah, maybe Tosin Aderabio, Richard James starting, Robert Sanchez, Enzo Fernandez, Moises Caicedo, Copa, Majami Gittens, Pedro Neto, Joao Pedro. I don't know if William Estavao may have recovered by then to be part of this fixture, or is it going to be Alando Garnacho starting? I will have to wait and see. We know that Liam Delap was ruled out for about 8 to 10 weeks through injury, so we're not expecting him to feature in this one. On the side of Bayern Munich, Chelsea ought to be worried of Harry Kane. They ought to be worried of Luis Diaz as well as Michael Olise. All three players have played in the Premier League before, and they know a thing or two about this Chelsea side. You could argue by the time Harry Kane left the club, Enzo Maresca wasn't the one in the dugout for the Blues, but that notwithstanding, he knows a thing or two about Chelsea. Then we do expect a double pivot in Bayern Munich's side. That's Joshua Kimmich alongside Leon Goretzka, with Serge Gnabry ahead of them. Now, Serge Gnabry gets to get ahead of them because we're talking about the absence of Jamal Musiala, who unfortunately had a very, very nasty injury in which he broke his leg during the FIFA Club World Cup over there in the USA in the summer. Diet Upamecano will deputize Jonathan Tah in the centre-back pairing, while Josip Stanisic will be and Konrad Lema will be the right and left wing backs, and then Manuel Neuer is expected to be back in goal, and things like that, and things like that. So that's an expectation. That's an expectation for today's fixture. My prediction is Bayern Munich win this one by 3 goals to 1 or 3-2. That's my expectation. But I still expect Bayern Munich to win nonetheless. The other fixture, like I said, Liverpool against Atletico de Madrid. Um, Atletico de Madrid have not started their season really, really well, despite all the enormous recruitment that they managed to do in the transfer window. While in sharp contrast, Liverpool on the other side are unbeaten as far as the Premier League is concerned, are winning 4 out of 4, including beating one of the direct title rivals in Arsenal by a goal to nil at Anfield. So yeah, there's that all that to wonder about in terms of today's fixtures. Then Paris Saint Germain against PSG. So those are some of the fixtures that should be coming your way today. What else? The speculation around the future of Ruben Amorim continues. I was seeing some reports. I do not know to what extent of credibility, suggesting that Ruben Amorim has been given 3 games to turn the ship around before he's shown the exit. Whether that holds any truth to it remains to be seen, but I mean, Chelsea is not easy ask, and that's the opponent they do have over the weekend at 7:30 p.m. I think that will be on Super Sunday. I stand to be corrected on the kickoff time. But anyways, that's it from me. I thank you guys for always tuning in. I want to wish you a blessed day. Thank you so much, Sarko's podcast. Since our family, LFC, always a pleasure to see you guys around. Bye bye for now, and I'll see you guys next time.